The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I am your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. It is early tampering period, and we are already trying to lock down all the deals and all the ongoings in the season so far. But first, I wanted to say thank you so much for your thoughts, prayers, and reflections over the last week. My wife's grandmother passed away, and I appreciate all the thoughts, prayers, and reflections once again. You know, one of the reasons why we were off last week, but everything has gone well. The family's doing well, and I thank you once again for everything and all the messages that you've left. So thank you very, very much. But glad to be here tonight. Welcome to the Power Hour. I am Michael Bishop, and let's get our first guest in tonight. You know him very well from his podcast. He's a good friend of the show. Please welcome Ryan Harris. Ryan, welcome to the Power Hour.
Hey, what's going on, Mike? How you doing today?
I am exhausted, man. There's been so much news going left and right, and I've been trying to keep heads and heels of it all day.
Yeah, likewise. Phone been pinging all morning, all afternoon. I had to get to a point where I had to put it on silent because I was tired of my phone going off.
So, basically, there's just so much going on even before the clock struck midnight, before this free agency tampering began. So, I know there's so many stories we've got to get into, but I guess going back to some of the trade stuff last week, especially with Russell Wilson being a big deal going to Denver, what were your thoughts on that real quick before we jump into the news?
I thought it was interesting trade. Needed to happen on both sides. Seattle needed to move on and rebuild. Looking at Denver, they've been needing a quarterback really since Peyton Manning retired. They've been through so many quarterbacks. Paxton Lynch, Brock Osweiler, who else? Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock. There's so many more. I forgot to mention Trevor Siemian. It's a lot of quarterbacks, all right? And so they finally got their guy. It's interesting thing would be is how this going to change the landscape of the AFC West. I'm not sure how it's going to change in regards of the balance of power in that within that division, because I still think the Chiefs are still the favorite, but it does make things a little bit more interesting.
And we'll definitely get a little bit more into that, but we'll try and hit some of this top news that's been going around since yesterday and today. Let's hit the little screen. Welcome to the Power Hour, and here we go, putting down our NFL top news of the day. And starting out, it's basically, for Titans fans, this is really the best news we could have so far today. Last week being the big piece, Harold Landry staying with the Tennessee Titans, shoring up their defensive line. Then the shift focus to the offensive line, and it is now officially affirmed Ben Jones will stay with the Titans on a 2-year, $14 million deal. Ryan, what's your takes on this one?
I'm very excited about this. Ben Jones has been a staple for this offensive line for so many years. He's been here since, I believe, 2016, and he's just been basically the mainstay of this offensive line. He's been the guy that hasn't been injured. You know, you talk about injuries on the offensive line. You never really hardly mention Ben Jones, even though he has played hurt before. But he's just been the guy that you need. And the center is a very important position. You definitely don't want to rebuild that position, especially if you got a guy like Ben Jones that you need to keep. And he's just a guy that he puts his hard hat on, he goes to work, and he's a very important piece for this offense. So I'm very excited about this signing.
I definitely don't question the man's toughness. He'll walk out in the snow in shorts and bare feet, so his toughness is definitely not on trial here. But it definitely sets a bigger picture precedence of what the Titans are going to be doing, especially when the draft rolls around. It seems especially that they've gone out and signed a tackle at that position to try and shore up what David Quisenberry is going to be leaving behind. So I believe it was a young man from Seattle. I believe it was Jamarco Jones, if that's right.
Right.
They'll be adding him as a backup. So is the picture becoming a little more clear now that they've basically had to let Saffold go? Does it mean that they're going to have to start filling in these empty slots, or are they going to have to move some guys around?
A little bit of both. I think they're going to move some guys around. I also think that it's possible that they are going to draft an offensive line. I know Titan fans do not want to hear that, but definitely think they're going to hire someone. I mean, not hire, but draft someone in somewhere between maybe the middle or late rounds, and kind of fill those roles up. But it's definitely going to be a little bit of moving around, a little bit of shifting in the offensive line.
And right now, the Titans are in the positive in the books right now, but the deals won't become official till the 16th, I believe. So right now, if anybody's trying to find any information on the cap, right now they won't set until the league year starts, once free agency becomes official. So once those deals come on the books, the Titans are going to have to find a little bit extra money somewhere. So where do you think the next round of cuts are going to happen?
Probably in about the next, I say maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Right now, free agency is kind of hot. They kind of want to, you kind of want to get that out of the way first and see how much money that you want to spend on these players. And then once that kind of dies down a little bit before the draft, that's when you'll start to see a little bit more cuts. And then that way, all the teams can kind of get in position on who they need to draft once the draft arrives.
And it'll be interesting to see what those plans go forward as we see when the draft starts hitting. But still, a lot of moves to be made in free agency, but Tennessee doing the best thing and keeping their in-house guys in-house. Moving on to our next news story. Apparently, the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't feel like waiting on Jimmy Garoppolo anytime soon, so now it's Mitchburgh. Yes, Mitch Trubisky is now a Pittsburgh Steeler, and the hunt for their quarterback seemingly seems to be over for the moment. So, Ryan, do you think this is a career rejuvenating move for Mitchell Trubisky?
I actually like it for the Steelers and for Mitch Trubisky. I don't, of course, he's not a household name at this point in regards to the quarterback position, but he's a bridge QB. I think it's a low risk, low reward, or potential minimum reward move for the Steelers. If it works out, that helps his trade value for next year if they wanted to move on from him. Or maybe he does so well to a point where you keep him for the long term. But overall, I think that, you look at Mr. Trubisky and in this situation, this is just an opportunity for him to kind of get back to the way things were when he first got drafted as a top 3 pick. You're in a winning situation. You're in a winning culture. You got Mike Tomlin. You got the Steelers organization who's all about winning, and it's going to help put players like Mr. Trubisky in a position to win. But I think for Pittsburgh, if it works out, great. If it doesn't, the draft class for next year is a little bit better than the draft class this year for quarterback. So I think it's a good move for Pittsburgh.
And it definitely kind of sets an idea of what Pittsburgh wants to do in the draft now, especially some glaring holes on the offensive line. I know center could be a position, and I know they could possibly end up maybe bringing in another receiver if Juju Smith-Schuster leaves. Do you think that this move might give Smith-Schuster a little more confidence to hang around for maybe one more year?
Possibly, but I think the Steelers and Juju, I think they're ready to kind of part ways with each other. I think that Juju is ready to, see what else is out there, take his TikToking ways to another city, and then, and as for Pittsburgh, they're not going to miss Juju because they got some good receivers. They got Chase Claypool. He's a solid receiver when he's not doing his antics, and then you got Deontay Johnson, who I thought he probably was the most improved receiver from last year to this year. So I think they're going to be fine, without him. But, you never know. They might bring him back.
And the Pittsburgh defense definitely isn't going to be a problem going into next year, but they're not going to have to be putting the games on their back, so to say. But is it going to be a lot of pressure on Trubisky to, perform early, especially knowing that this might be his last chance to be a starting quarterback?
Probably so. Right now, his career is basically being projected to be basically a backup quarterback. This is really his last chance to show that, hey, I got something. I can be a starting quarterback in the National Football League, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if he's going. I'm not sure he's the answer at Pittsburgh, but I think again, I think it's still going to be I think it's a low risk, low reward move for Pittsburgh. Either way, I think Pittsburgh is in a good spot on whether they get in the quarterback next year or they're going to settle for Mitch Trubisky for next year.
Either way, the Steelers have put Mitch Trubisky under center for at least this season. Going forward, we'll just have to wait and see. And our buddy, the 615 podcast, brought up a good point. He says, I think Jenkins is gone by Wednesday morning along with a slew of restructures, and I agree with that. I think Jenkins' contract, especially unless he's willing to make a restructure, I don't see him being around. And knowing Caleb Farley will eventually be taking his spot.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think Jenkins, I think that 1 year experiment was basically a mixed bag, mostly bad than good. And I don't think it's just worth the risk of keeping him around for another year.
And it's definitely going to be a little more helpful to see what we got when we drafted him last year. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Moving on to our next story. Apparently it's not all great for everybody on free agency. And apparently Jarvis Landry is now looking for a new home. The Cleveland Browns have severed ties with a wide receiver. And it appears that he is going to be not on the market very long, with especially suitors like Buffalo and Kansas City and even Green Bay looking for him. So, Ryan, out of those three, what do you think could be the best fit for him out of those three teams?
To really be honest, I think Green Bay would be the best fit. There's a couple of reasons. One, you'll be the number one or number two receiver, depending on what Devontae Adams situation, kind of how that's going to, pan out. And then number two, you're going to be playing in the NFC, which is a weaker conference. You won't have to, go through, Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. In the NFC, you basically got, Tom Brady's back, but you got the Rams and maybe the Cowboys, and that's it. And I think the Packers will be a great fit for him for his numbers and overall from a winning standpoint, or the easiest route to winning would be Green Bay.
And that would be a good fit. My only question would be like the cap figures, especially now that Devontae Adams has said that he will not take the franchise tag and he wants to be paid before he plays this year. So do you think this might kind of force his hand to maybe play through that tag? Maybe it's a gamble for Green Bay to bring in Landry to say, well, we could play without you for a year. Do you think that might be the strategy here?
It could be, but like you said, that's bold to do that. That's very bold. I'm not really sure if that's the route that they want to go. To your point, Green Bay is in salary cap hell, especially now that they pay Aaron Rodgers all that money. They really in salary cap hell. From a winning standpoint, it makes sense for Landry, but if it's for Green Bay, it probably won't make sense into adding him. You probably want to address other matters, and number one is trying to get that situation with Adams pan out, because Aaron Rodgers can't be Aaron Rodgers without Devontae Adams, and Devontae Adams is no good to you if he doesn't go out there and suit up and be one of the top wide receivers in the game.
And Green Bay would definitely benefit massively with the arrival of Landry, but I also think you have to think that Kansas City would be more than willing to give him a lower. He'd be willing to take a lower pay hit right there to play with a Super Bowl contender. So, do you think that might be a possibility for him as well?
Yeah, I just feel like Kansas City needs to address the defensive side of the football more than they need to address the offensive side of the football. I think that they do need a second receiver to go with Tyreek Hill. They need a third weapon to go with Hill and Travis Kelce, but they got more issues on the defensive side of the football. That's been the biggest issue really since Patrick Mahomes has been their starting quarterback, and I just think they need to address those matters before adding a weapon. For Patrick Mahomes, because if Patrick Mahomes is really that guy, and if he's really the best quarterback in the league, he should be able to handle just having Hill and Travis Kelce. I mean, he's been doing it for the last couple of years.
And that's a good point. The chemistry between those two is immensely important, especially for the structure of this team. But it's fun to think of adding a third piece to the puzzle. But long term, I mean, there's a lot of options you can bring around. But, the 615 podcast brings up another good point, and I'll bring that up in just a second. Al Pierce says, tighten up, fellas. Go kick mess and tighten tail. Sorry. And our buddy Lumenson says, hi. Good seeing you on the show, Lou. Good seeing you on the show as well, Al. And 615 brings up a really good point. He had a surprise suitor for Landry, Tennessee, because of the familiarity with Tannehill. And I think you and I talked about this earlier, and I know Landry and Tannehill didn't have the best relationship in Miami, and that's one reason why I've been kind of quiet about that addition. But do you think that there might be some roses there? Could there be just some amends, maybe bury the hatchet between those two?
I mean, possibly. I mean, I don't think there are issues with that deep. It's just more football related. I know that Landry, before he left Miami, stated that him and Ryan didn't really talk a whole lot in regards of in regards of football matters. So I mean that could be that. I guess you could say that hatch can be buried. But at the end of the day, I think Landry is really not a great fit for Tennessee. I feel like Tennessee needs a little bit more speed in their receiving core, and Landry doesn't really provide you speed. I just think that Titans need to get more youthful in that side in that receiving room instead of having someone like AJ Brown or. You got A.J. Brown, but you also got Julio, who's up there in age as well. So I just think that Landry is not exactly the fit here for Tennessee.
That and definitely the salary cap situation the Titans have right now. I don't think it's ideal at the moment, and we'll definitely explore that a little bit more as the show goes on. But Landry will definitely have his fill of suitors as free agency goes on, but I don't see him being gone on the market for long. But another candidate out there on the market, especially after the entire legal situation is so far for right now been resolved on a criminal basis, Desean Watson is definitely on the move and looking for a new home right now after a lengthy legal battle. Ryan, I know this had been just a story of just interest over the year, and a lot of us have really just kind of stayed away of trade talks or anything, especially with the legal situation. But even with that, it's only partially resolved right now. A lot of teams probably don't realize that Watson could very well still be suspended by Roger Goodell, kind of in the similar situation that Ben Roethlisberger went through a decade ago. And the only difference here is he has 20 more accusers, as Roethlisberger only had one. So do you think this is a situation where teams still have to be on their guard and be a little more diligent about this move?
Oh, absolutely. You got to do your homework because, like you just mentioned, Watson has 20 accusers. So to me, this situation is really, in my opinion, far from over. But also at the same time, you just made another great point. Roger Goodell, he could suspend Watson for another year. He could also suspend him for 8 games. You have to also do your homework, and really, to me, the most patient team is going to end up getting his services. So if you're like a team right now that's quarterback needed, the question you have to have for yourself is how much you are willing to wait for this Watson situation to end. Because to me, it seems like it's not going to end anytime soon.
But, there's a lot of still ifs and what ifs in this scenario, and it's far from over. I mean, especially from a civil standpoint, but we'll keep more tabs on it as it goes on. But right now with the trade talks, I think really you only have basically any team in the NFC right now, and the two teams being talked about the most would have to be the Carolina Panthers and even potentially the New Orleans Saints have been mentioned. So out of the two, which do you think might be the more realistic landing spot for them?
I would say Carolina, simply because they have a really good roster. It's not a bad roster. It's just that the quarterback situation is terrible. You got Christian McCaffrey, assuming that he's going to be healthy. So I'm just speaking assumingly. But I think that outside of Christian McCaffrey, you got DJ Moore, you got Robbie Anderson. So they got some weapons. And the defense is already pretty good anyway. I just think that Carolina is a better situation than New Orleans. Now, if Sean Payton was still there, I probably would lean a little bit towards New Orleans, but they just got Al. They got Allen, the coach, to be their new coach. I'm not sold on him. I'm not a big fan of his as a coach, but I think Carolina is a better fit in my opinion.
And I also have heard rumblings that Seattle very much could be in the running as well, and they do have the draft capital to make a move, probably of that magnitude. So, do you think that it might be well enough for Seattle to try and make a run at him and see if they can add the talent that they need through the draft and possibly have a competitive team?
To really be honest, I don't think they should go after Watson. I think they need to address the full rebuild. I honestly thought that Wilson was going to be traded and Pete Carroll was going to get fired. I think that's what should have happened in my opinion. But I think Seattle should embrace the full rebuild. Rebuild, try to rebuild through the draft as much as possible, and kind of just go from there. But I don't think. I mean, technically, it makes sense for Watson to be there because he'll have some weapons. He'll have DK Metcalf. He'll have Tyler Lockett. But I just don't think that. I don't know if Seattle is embracing the full rebuild or is they just trying to be competitive. I'm not really sure what Seattle's trying to do, and I don't. For a player, you don't want to be in a situation in an organization that doesn't know which side of the coin they want to be on.
And it's going to be a big mystery, but I don't think it'll take too long for us to figure out where he'll end up. I'd say maybe by the end of the week, Desean Watson will have found his new home. Maybe even sooner. And Al Pierce asks, what do you think Landry's price tag would be? And I'll let you take that one, Ryan, because I know, honestly, it would probably be somewhere around his original salary before he was cut.
Yeah, I think, what was his original salary?
I would have to look that up real quick, but let's see. Along those lines.
But honestly, though, I think it depends on which team gets him. If it's a championship caliber team, it's going to be a short deal. It's not going to be a long-term deal. If it's a team that's trying to compete for maybe a playoff spot, he might get a longer deal. But I think that if it's going to be Buffalo or Kansas City or Green Bay, it's definitely going to be a 1 to 2 year deal.
Now, the contract that he signed with the Browns, which was back, the extension was in 2018, was a 5-year, $75.5 million deal, and he had already served it was right around 4 years of that deal. So he was coming right into the final year of that. So on the contract hit of that, I think it probably would have been about $15 million.
Right.
Maybe 15, 16.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards like 9 to 10 million maybe, and that's on a short-term deal. I'm thinking that it's going to be a 1 to 2 year deal with one of these Super Bowl contending teams. I don't see him going to a team that's competing or trying to compete for a playoff spot. I definitely don't see him going to a bad team. I think he's at that point of his career where he's approaching 30 years old, where he's trying to get a Super Bowl ring just like his former teammate Odell Beckham did. And I just think that he's going to just take the short-term deal, and it's going to be one of these Super Bowl contending teams.
And more than likely, that's probably going to be the scenario that happens. Lou Man says he'll be going with Seattle, with Watson going there, and that's fine. I mean, you've got some people that are thinking that. And Al Pierce brings up another good question. He asks, do you think we'll go after Allen Robinson? And honestly, Al, I don't see Robinson being a part of the Titans' plans. I think, along those lines, Jacksonville's been linked to him very harshly through the free agent period. And I have heard that the Saints even have been connected. So, two of those teams, Chicago could retain him if they want to, but I don't think that they're going to come up with the money that he's looking for. Ryan, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've heard the same teams. Also, I heard Detroit is interested in Allen Robinson as well. The most realistic option probably would be Detroit. Maybe because they have the cap space for him. Jacksonville, I mean, he played there. He was drafted there. It would make sense. But I'm not sure if I'm not sure what Allen Robinson wants to do. Does he want to compete for a championship, or does he want to, get his money and do what he normally has been doing and producing on bad teams? But we'll see. But I think the Titans, to answer Al's question, the Titans are not on Allen Robinson's radar.
But there are very, very many other teams that are. And more than likely, he'll get his payday regardless. And finally, in our last bit of news, what the buck? Tom Brady shocks the world and basically says, "No, these high gas prices, I'm coming back." That's all there is to it. Tom Brady unofficially unretiring. Ryan, I know there were some of us that thought he could come back, that he possibly could have come back. What's your take from this?
He would do it on Selection Sunday, so shout out to college basketball. But I honestly did not really see this coming, but in a way, I was not really surprised. You said that maybe Giselle sent him to the store, maybe sent him to Target or somewhere to get some items, and he was just like, "Nah, this ain't it. I need to go back to football."
Yeah.
but I'm not really sure though. Honestly, I think he got something left in the tank because he led the league in passing yards. I believe he led the league in touchdowns too, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not surprised. But then at the same time, I'm like, the thing that was funny to me is where he tweeted that he had unfinished business, and I'm like, you won 7 Super Bowls, you won multiple MVPs, you won multiple Super Bowl MVPs, you've been to the Pro Bowl 15 times, and you saying you have unfinished business. Everything is finished. You've done pretty much everything that you wanted to do. At this point, Tom Brady's just being greedy.
And that's a fair assessment. I mean, really, if Brady had unfinished business, he'd go to Detroit and win a Super Bowl there. I mean, that's about as unfinished business as you could probably have. But, I mean, really just from a health perspective and just age-wise, somebody playing in their mid-40s, it worries me that they could potentially have that career-ending hit. And, I don't want that to happen, but now that's pretty much back on the table. I hope he can play a full season without getting hurt, because no one wants to see anybody go down and leave on a gurney and then retire afterwards. So I just don't want to get those Brett Favre kind of vibes.
Yeah, you make a great point there. I just I feel the same way. You don't want to go into your Hall of Fame speech on a wheelchair, or have a concussion where you can't remember all of the greatness that you have done and things like that. So those things do concern me too.
I mean, eventually at some point we all get told we can't play the game anymore, and Tom Brady has exceeded all those expectations, but he walks a very, very thin line of what could possibly happen, especially in the negative aspect. So, I wish him the best, and I just hope for his sake, there's nothing that can alter that going forward. So, best of luck, Tom Brady, and I hope that unfinished business is worth it, because you just pissed off every Jets fan in the United States.
And Bills fans, Dolphins fans, and basically the entire NFC South, because that was a bad division before Tom Brady decided to come back. Now it's like Tampa is going to steamroll that division now.
But still, we'll just see how everything goes, and hopefully he stays healthy and unhurt. I'll go that far. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, we've got mock drafts. Ryan's going to talk about his, and I'll talk about mine. But let's take a quick 30-second break. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour, back in 30. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop. Thank you for joining us on this Monday evening. I'd love to thank my guest joining us tonight, Ryan Harris. Always great having you on the show, buddy. And yes, as you've seen on the promo, it is coming April the 28th, the Power Hour Draftacular. We will be there as the first round of the draft unfolds. We'll have many guests. I will get them lined up and get you a list of who will be coming. Haven't figured that out yet, but the Draftacular will be next month. Book it, bank it. It's going to be the bomb. Ryan, thank you once again for joining us on the show, and I wanted to give you a chance to give a shout out to the fans, where to find you on all your social media platforms.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As always, thank you for having me on the show. But you can follow me on Twitter at RyanHarris662. Also, you can follow me at my podcast. I have a podcast called The Jump Pass. Follow that at The Jump Pass TN, as TN as in abbreviated as Tennessee. I talk about basically all things Tennessee Titans. So if you are a Tennessee Titan fan, or you're just a fan of football in general, come listen to my podcast. I usually record every week unless life happens, but other than that, I will record every week.
Definitely check out his podcast, The Jump Pass. It's always a good listen, always great insight. The man knows what he's talking about. And you want to be smarter, you want to be healthier and happier, listen to the man's podcast. I guarantee you'll get all of them. And I'll throw a little shout out to me. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show once again. Your support means everything. And don't forget, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. And for all our YouTube viewers, make sure that you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more content. We appreciate it. We'll keep doing it as long as you keep following us. All right, Ryan, what do you say? We've got some mock draft work to do.
All right, let's do it.
Throwing the little screens up, and once again, it's the way too early mock drafts. Ryan, we're going to put you up first. And you sent me your draft first, and I'll go ahead and let you break everything down, and we'll just talk about all the picks and where we think that they'll fit in. So starting at 26, you definitely felt that Tennessee needed to fill in that wide receiver slot, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, so my strategy for the Titans, and by the way, I basically did this mock draft in basically what I wanted the Titans to do, and not exactly what the Titans will do. So that's a difference. But I went with wide receiver because I'm going to the assumption that the Titans will not sign a wide receiver in the free agent pool, and they're going to just draft one, which they don't normally do that. But I feel like they might do something a little bit different this year. I'm just kind of hoping. But I think that Chris Olave is probably the best option because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago in regards to Jarvis Landry, they need some more youth. They need some speed. They need some separation. They need a wide receiver that can separate from corners. And that's exactly what this guy can do. I think that he's probably one of the best route runners, if not the best route runner in this draft class. I think that he has the potential to maybe be the best receiver in this draft class once, he gets, some season under his belt. And I just think he's really good. Now, there's some other receivers that I like. I did like Jameson Williams. Of course, the injury at the national championship game is a little bit concerning. So, I mean, it would be the most Titan thing to do to get an injured player in the first round.
That's right.
But so I didn't want to go that route. I like Dotson from Penn State, but I just think Chris Olave is the better receiver at this spot. And then I went to the second round. Trey Mcbride. Of course, a lot of people don't know who Trey Mcbride is. We'll get you up to speed right quick. He's the John Mackey Award winner. If you don't know who the John Mackey Award is, it's the best tight end in the country, and it was him. He had 1,000 yards receiving at tight end. It's very hard to do. Very hard to be 1,000-yard receiver at tight end. But Colorado State was terrible, so you don't get that much exposure from Colorado State. I think they won like 2 games. I know one of their losses was to Vanderbilt. If you lose to Vanderbilt, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, but he's a really good receiver. And the Titans definitely need some help at tight end. Still not out of the picture for them to get a tight end via free agency, but they also still need to draft one as well to kind of someone that can kind of come in and be an impact player right away. And I think Trey Mcbride would be that guy. And then let's see, Jack Cohen.
I'll jump in real quick. I do like the McBride pick, and I think it'll be really interesting to see if he'll fall to 90, because you have a lot of people saying that he could go mid-second round, so that would definitely be a steal for Tennessee if he falls at 90. But going back to your quarterback pick, Jack Cohen from Notre Dame, I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of film on him yet. What stood out the most?
He's a system fit for me. You know what the Titans like to do, right? They like to play action pass. They like to they try to create some big plays from play action, and that's the kind of quarterback he is. He's more of like a play action guy, a guy that can throw the ball down the field. He's not very athletic. He's definitely a statue in the pocket. I can only remember one play where he ran and got like positive yards. It was like a 20-yard run against Wisconsin, but that was the only film that I can find from him from running in the pocket kind of situation. But I think that he's a system fit, and I think it's a low risk kind of a draft. I know a lot of fans not going to like the pick. I'm personally probably not going to like the pick either. But if you want to kind of take a stab at a quarterback and see if it works out, I mean, I think this might be your guy, especially if you don't get one in the first round. I think, in this particular round, I think it would be a good fit. And another weakness of him is, like a lot of other quarterbacks, they struggle when pressure comes to him. He gets very erratic. He makes mistakes. But other than that, though, I think it's a systematic fit. I think it's a Mike Vrabel pick, and I think he's the kind of guy that can compete with Logan Woodside for the backup role.
And I don't mind Tennessee drafting a quarterback. I do have some thoughts on that, and I'll probably save that for another show because I've just got so much to cover in that, and I've only got so much time to give you, and I definitely want to make sure you get your draft in, so I won't take up a lot of time on that. But I do think anybody that's a system fit that could just step in and handle the job in case of the worst scenario, I'm all for that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm not in the expectation that this is going to be the guy that takes Ryan Tannehill's spot. But if you want to make sure that just in case something happens to Ryan Tannehill, which we're hoping not, but you want the best backup available. And I think, to me, Jack Cohen could be a guy that can overtake Logan Woodside. Even though we re-signed Logan Woodside, I believe, for a year, that's a contract you can easily get away from and release him. But especially if Cohen does well in training camp, and especially in the preseason. So that's kind of where my thought process was when I was doing this mock draft. And then,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it looks like then the next guy was Jermaine Lowell, another system fit. Just a guy that just to provide some depth in the interior. He's a really good run stopping defensive lineman. I think he'll be good for he's definitely a 2-down guy, not a 3-down guy. I think that's a guy you can put in. You can just plug in doing running situations from the opposition. So that was my thought process there, just to provide some more depth. I know they re-signed Tierra Tart, but you can never have enough depth, especially in the interior. So because that's 9 times out of 10, most games are usually won or lost within the trenches. So that was my thought process for that one.
That's a good pickup, real good pickup. And your next pick at 168, Zach Tom. I've actually been watching a little film on him, and I really like him. He looks to me like he's going to be a very, very gem kind of a find if somebody drafts him.
Yeah, this is a very John Robinson pick for me because I think that Zach Tom, what he does is he does the one thing that John Robinson and Mike Vrabel kind of been preaching about, especially Mike Vrabel, versatility. Of course, he's listed as a tackle, but he actually can play center. And this was a pick that basically thinking about in regards to Ben Jones, not because I didn't think the Titans would resign Ben Jones, but Ben Jones will be 33 years old when the season starts, and you got to start thinking about who is going to kind of take his place about a year or two from now. And Zach Tom could be that guy. So I think that Zach Tom and most of his film when he was playing center, he did a really good job, and a lot of scouts are saying that he's better at center. So I think that's going to be a nice little late round pickup if that option is available.
And it's definitely just amazing that you can have somebody that started their career out at center and then moved to the left tackle position. And apparently, throughout his whole career, his 3 years at Wake Forest, only allowed 4 sacks, 5 hits, and it would appear a lot of hurries, but, it's just somebody young that's still learning their footwork. And, Tennessee likes getting linemen that can be projects and eventually elevating them up the starting grid.
Yeah, he's got 34 stars on his belt in college, so he has a lot of experience. So he's not going to be too much of a project. So he pretty much has been out there on the field a lot. So that's I think that's very important as well. You don't want to get a player that's only had 12 stars or 13 stars. You want a guy that's got some experience, got some some reps under his belt in college, and that way it gets him prepared for the next level. And then the next guy I got is Isaac Taylor Stewart from USC. Now, this is a guy a lot of people don't know a lot about because he's had a lengthy injury history. He was actually a 5-star corner from USC, and then he came in. He was injured in 2018. He was injured again in 2019. Then he had the COVID shortened season in 2020. So, and then last year he played a little bit. I think he had 1 interception last season, but I think this is a guy that got a lot of potential. So it looks like this is more of a potential pick, and I think this is kind of right up John Robinson's alley when it comes to picking in the 6th round or the 7th round, where he's basically picking you based off of potential and an opportunity to make the team. So that's why I kind of went with this. And plus, I think the Titans do need to address the cornerback position a little bit more, not necessarily because of Farley's injury history, but more so because they need some more depth on that side of the field.
And I definitely agree with that. I mean, you shouldn't have to devalue a guy because of injuries. I mean, you can get him out on the field and see if he has the potential to bring in something to the table. And anybody that has the opportunity to come out, especially with that skill set, John Robinson's more than willing to shake the dice on him. So I think that's a really good pickup, and especially, like you said, depth is important, especially at the cornerback position. And shout out to P Shark watching the show. How's it doing, buddy?
What's up, Shark? And then the last pick, Stanley Beverly here from Arizona. He's a speedy receiver, very small. It's like only 5'9", 180-ish. He's a guy, like I said, speed guy, Arizona. A guy that, again, he can take the top off of defenses. Again, that was kind of my thought process, needing young, speedy receivers to take the top off of defenses. Of course, there's little tape on him. There's some. That was the one thing that stood out to me was his ability to separate from corners. That was very important for my thought process. The downside is really he's, like I say, he's very small in stature. He could easily get bumped off on bump and run kind of situation. And plus, he played at Arizona. If you don't know who Arizona was arguably the worst football team in Division I or in FCS. So not a lot of good highlights from Arizona. I think they won 1 game last year. So, but those are my drafts. So.
And those are solid picks. I mean, a solid 7-round draft pick setup where I think really you picked some very good quality starters. You picked some guys that could fill in some positions. And, I mean, with your last pick at wide receiver, I mean, Gronk came out of Arizona, so sometimes good things can't come out of Arizona.
Besides the weather.
Exactly. Maybe a Super Bowl championship could come out of December for Titans fans, but we'll see how that goes. And now I will set up my mock draft. And to kind of get an idea of mine, I am a mover. I like shaking things up. And sometimes Sean Robinson has, and sometimes he stayed pat. But I think along this year, you definitely want to get some more depth. So in the spirit of that, I had to get a trade, and the Packers were more than willing to take a trade off my hands. So in order for 26, I got their 28th, their 92nd, their 245th, and their 255th. All for that. And of course, apparently they give grades out for these now, so I really didn't care because it was a good trade in my eyes, and I got 4 picks for 1. So who won in the end? And with that 28th pick, I decided I've loved Treylon Burks ever since I've got to watch film on him. I love his game. Yes, he didn't have a good combine, but that didn't matter to me. I think some guys don't do well on tests, but when they get the opportunity to shine on the field, they shine. And Burke's athletic ability is just something that I love and I marvel at, and I think he's a perfect fit for the Titans. So 28, I lock him in. Easy pick there. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get anything to the second round, so I had to be a little creative here. So at 90, and especially with Quisenberry not returning, I know now I've got to lock in my tackle position. And Daesh from Arizona State, he's very good at being a versatile player, and he can play anywhere on the line. He's more comfortable at left tackle, but he has played time at right tackle, so I feel right there the guy could come in and start in that slot if I need him to. He has the size, he has the length. I would like him to work on his footwork a little more, but it's nothing major. I think he's a good pickup there. Easy pick. Go from the next one at 92. Luke Fortner from Kentucky, I think, could possibly go even sooner than this. So at this point, I had to make the move here. I'm very happy Ben Jones has decided to stay. But with Fortner, I've got somebody that is going to be waiting in the wings, especially Jones being on a 2-year deal. That'll give this kid some time to sit, learn from the best, and when it comes time, it'll give him the chance to shine. Then going to the 4th round at 128, I love Christian Watson. And if this kid's on the board, Tennessee needs to take him. He can play receiver, he can return kicks, he can return punts. And Tennessee desperately needs somebody that can be in a return game to make a difference. You can't make a difference if you're starting on your own 25. But he can get you to the 35, maybe the 45. That gives Tennessee the offense they need to get in shorter range to score more touchdowns. That builds up the special teams' ability there. That's what they've been lacking. Christian Watson is well worth that pick at 128. Then moving on to the next rounds, like you said, I think they need to add some depth at cornerback. And Cordell Float is a very interesting prospect. There's not a lot of film on him, and there's very little even written about him. But it's just a scenario where he was a transfer. I can't remember which school off the top of my head, but I know he transferred to LSU, and he didn't play a whole lot. But the athletic ability that he did show was very encouraging for somebody that young could go out and play at a high level. So Float, to me, has the potential to be a good role player. I think he could start out on special teams, which is something every team needs to find. Most guys start out on special teams, so I think this would be a good spot for him as well. Then going to 167, it's already been established that Darren Evans is not coming back, and there's still questions about Hillard and Foreman at the running back position, so it's a pretty easy scenario to guess that we need to add another running back. But I've also added a running back that can catch out of the backfield pretty good, and once again, can return kicks. So I'm adding a lot of special team flavor into this draft, which is something the Titans desperately need. I think it's something you have to elevate yourself in the third aspect of the game. Silvan Beau, or Bam Knight, is a running back that's quick, gets downfield very fast, he's very agile, and he is just a dynamite runner. I think not a lot of people know about him because he was at North Carolina State. But believe me, the kid has some feet on him. I love him at this pick, and I think he'd fit in well with the Titans, especially backing up Derrick Henry. Then at 203, tight end is going to be a big issue here. And Grant Calirata from SMU, if I said that right, and I apologize if I didn't, the film that I have watched, he's very raw. But there's potential there, and at this point in the draft, it was a very good pick, especially knowing Tennessee needs to fill in the tight end position a little more. We'll see what happens with Michael Pruitt and Anthony Fersker. I think one of them may come back. I'm not sure which one. But along those lines, I think you have to fill in that slot with a younger guy. I think he'll get some special teams reps and potentially get in some offensive schemes on the blocking side. And with the extra pick that I acquired in the trade at 245, I know I'm going to have some edge help. Basically because I know Bud Dupree, if he can stay healthy, will be a difference maker, but I need more depth. Rashad Weaver will be coming back, but he'll be coming off an ACL injury, and I think that's something that they have to monitor as well. Defensive depth is key, especially when you're trying to make a run in the playoffs. You have to have guys to rotate out. It's no secret, and it's the biggest secret of success. So, S.A. Omenato, if I've said that correctly, from Minnesota. Love this kid, love his speed. I think along the lines, he's a project guy. But I think with the defensive line that we have right now and the toughness that he's shown on some of the film that I've watched, I'm more than happy to bring him in and let him have a chance to learn from this defense. Get him in on special teams as well. There's always room to move up. If you can play special teams well, you can move up on the defense. That's just my mindset. And Lou Man brings up a good point, and I raved about this last week. He said, I thought you picked Dicker the kicker. Yes, Lou, Dicker was my favorite pick out of all the kickers, but he got picked, unfortunately. So I'm not afraid to go after a kicker in this draft. I think Tennessee has to. It's too much of a stigmata. I'm going to break taboo on it. I drafted a kicker. Jordan Stout from Penn State does very well. He's hit from 50 a bunch of times and has been very reliable for Penn State for the last 3 to 4 years. So Tennessee has not been able to lock down the kicker position other than last year, but they need somebody young that's going to be doing this for at least the next 10 to 15 years. Jordan Stout could be that guy, but very much if Dicker the kicker is available, I will go with Dicker the kicker.
I like this. That Grant kid from SMU though, he's very raw. I'm surprised that you was able to get him at 6. Some of the mock drafts that I did, he was going in round 4.
Some people are really going to fall in love with this kid, and it's not a stretch to see him go at 4 because a lot of the mocks that I continue to do, some of these guys, they'll go up, they'll go down. It's all just a roll of the dice, but along those lines, special teams to me is the most important thing here. I've got to fill slots in for my starting positions on offense and defense, but I do need to solidify the special teams, which has been somewhat of a weakness the last couple of years.
Yeah, I agree, especially at kicker. That definitely needs to be addressed from a more of a long-term standpoint instead of just keep getting these band-aid kickers. I mean, I like what Randy did, but my expectations of Randy doing that for a second straight year are very low. So I definitely understand why getting a kicker in this draft. As long as it ain't the second round, I'm cool with it. I mean, you could do it the 6th round or the 7th round, but as long as you don't do like Tampa Bay did and pick a kicker in the 2nd round, then you should be good.
Yeah, just do your homework, fill in what you need to fill in, and if you got some extra picks to spare, go for it. I mean, if you want to draft a punter if you need a punter. If you need a kicker, draft a kicker. Cincinnati needed a kicker last year, and I love the kid. There you go. It worked out. Sometimes you just got to take a chance. Yeah, he ended our season.
Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our season. Yeah, he ended our
he luckily ended our season.
Yeah.
That was Cincinnati luck. We'll just leave it at that. All right, guys, we'll take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, Tennessee definitely needs to add some more playmakers in free agency if they get the opportunity to and the money in the cap space. But if they do, I've got an interesting idea, and I've had a source tell me it's very likely that this could happen. So you heard it here first. So let's take a quick 30-second break. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30.
Tired of not being able to find the Power Hour on YouTube? Getting frustrated? There's got to be a better way. Well, now there is. Hey Alexa, find the Power Hour Tennessee Titans. All right, it's that simple. So sit back, relax, and watch every old episode, and new ones drop every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget, subscribe, like, and ring the bell for more content.
The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. I once again want to thank Ryan Harris for joining us on the show and bringing his insight. It's always great to have you on the show, buddy. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Ryan, before we go, we've got one more segment, and it's always important for people to remember free agency needs to be a marathon. It's not a race. Some teams have to run and get players first, and they have to get them quickly because they're trying to fill in slots because they desperately need playmakers. So just because you win free agency doesn't mean you win the regular season. And I've told people that for years. You know, there's teams that get graded like A+s and A's, and the ones that generally do are the ones that don't do anything afterwards. So Jacksonville, I'm looking at you. You know, you can bring in whoever you want, but you know, your story's very telling.
Oh, yeah. They do it every year. The Jaguars do it every single year. They spend a whole bunch of money on players that, you know, they might work out, but they do all of that just to win that next 4 games. So I'm expecting them to probably win 5 games instead of, 2 games that they won last season, or 3?
Ryan's being generous and giving them a couple extra games. But we'll see how that goes for them, but they've got a lot more work to do, and hopefully with Doug Peterson, they'll be able to do that, but you got to have your GM and your head coach on the same page. Not everybody's as lucky as Tennessee is.
That is true, sir.
So if y'all have a team that's like struggling between, having a power struggle between your offensive-minded coach and your money-tight spending owner or your GM that wants to control everything, you have our pity.
Especially if that GM is Trey Mcbride.
And if that's the case, sucks to be you. All right, Ryan, let's jump into this last segment real quick. And of course, Tennessee needs to continue to find playmakers wherever they can get the opportunity to. And the biggest thing I think that Tennessee needs to continue to strive for is to be creative. And I think, you know, especially having Todd Downing be the offensive coordinator, we got very vanilla. And it was very frustrating at times, and you wanted to see him just kind of open the playbook up and be a little more creative. And it just doesn't seem like that's going to be his style 100% of the time. And that's fine. I think that's one big reason the Titans decided to bring in Tim Kelly, to have them kind of co-op each other, kind of bounce ideas off the wall. Downing has the title, but I do feel that Tim Kelly will have a say in the room, and especially on game day. So what's the one thing I can do that would bridge that relationship to make it work?
I guess you have to establish that relationship like right from the start. Tim Kelly and Todd Downing has to have a sit down. They probably already have, but they probably need to have a sit down if they haven't, and say, "Hey, look, I'm not here." If you're Kelly, you say, "Look, I'm not here to take your job. I'm just here to help." And Todd Downing has to be receptive to that help. He can't be stubborn, and he cannot go into like, "Oh, hey, you know, I'm the OC. I'm gonna do what's best for the team," and you know all that gibberish. He just got to say, "You know what? What can you do to help me become a better play caller?" and Tim Kelly has to basically give him as much knowledge as possible to say, hey, look, if we need to open the offense up, Todd Downing needs to be receptive to that and say, okay, let me get some plays that I know that Ryan Tannehill can be successful in. So I think that's going to be the key. They just need to have they don't necessarily have to agree with everything that each other is saying towards about the offense, but they need to have an understanding of what do this offense need to be, because I feel like this offense needs a little bit of a makeover. I don't think they need to be such a run heavy team. I think they need to be a little bit more balanced and a little bit more pass heavy a little bit. That kind of helps out Derrick Henry.
And those are great points. And the one thing I'm going to point out that I think will definitely unite the two of them, you have to have a player with a kind of special ability that'll help open up that offense. And as much talent as they have on the roster, you have A.J. Brown, you have Julio Jones, you have Derrick Henry. I think there's ways to utilize them. I think there's ways to continually, potentially open up the floodgate and score points. But I also think you have to think outside the box. And you have to add somebody that has to force them to be creative. And you bring in somebody that is going to bring in change, and that's Cordell Patterson. You bring in a playmaker that can not only run the ball, but can also catch the ball, and can also play kickoffs.
I like it. I think that he's a guy, again, that big word that Tennessee loves, versatility. He can do it pretty much. He's a jack of all trades. He's a Swiss Army knife, or whatever you want to call him. That's what That's what Cordell Patterson is. I think he has that ability. My only concern really with Cordell Patterson is the age thing kind of scares me a little bit, because he's getting a little bit up there in age. I think he's 29, maybe 30, but I still think he has a lot of ability left to be that Swiss Army knife. And it hopefully we don't get that. Remember that we got Dexter McCluster kind of a little bit late in his career, where the Titans didn't know how to use him under Winston Hunt and what's the other guy, Mike Mularkey. Hopefully Todd Downing and Kelly would know how to use him.
And those are all great points. I mean, it would be concerning, especially not to have somebody be utilized to their full potential. So you have to take that into consideration. But a source of mine very close to me has said that Tennessee and the New England Patriots right now are the two teams that are really trying to fight for him. And don't be surprised if this does happen. So if it does, you heard it here first. But he's very, very much being shopped around. Tennessee is very much in the mix, along with New England. Both teams know how to use him. Patterson has had time in New England. He won a Super Bowl there. But hey, Tennessee has more talent than New England does. Let's be honest.
Yeah, he has more talent, and plus he played his college ball here in the University of Tennessee. So it makes a lot of sense.
It would definitely be a very, very welcome homecoming. And especially adding a very dynamic player that can do whatever he needs to do to make this offense successful and really give the Tennessee Titans something that they've been missing, a very dynamic playmaker that takes pressure off Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we need. We need somebody that's going to make defenses think a little bit more than they already have to. Basically, defenses when they play the Titans is basically the stop Derrick Henry, make Ryan Tannehill beat us. But if you get a speedy receiver, that probably is not going to be as easy as you draw up. So I definitely think Cordell Patterson would definitely be a huge upgrade in that number 3 wide receiver role.
And I know the big question everybody will ask: can Tennessee afford him? And surprisingly, they can. Patterson is marked as a wide receiver, but he's primarily used in different functions. He runs the ball. He can be used in wide receiver situations. He's a kick returner. He can do punt returns as well. So somebody around that line you look at as kind of a specialist. Now, his deal with Atlanta came about $3 million for 1 year. and I think about 1.3 of that was guaranteed money. So I think a simple 1 year, $4 million, $2 million guaranteed should get the deal done.
Yeah, that's gonna be the key. Is he gonna want a 1 year deal, or is he looking for a multi-year deal?
And it's a great point because I did take, a multi-year contract into that situation. So I wouldn't be opposed to Tennessee giving him a 2 to 3 year deal, but knowing that he'll be in his 30s, and usually guys in that kind of role, like you said, a decline could come. So if in his second year of a 3-year deal, his numbers drastically just plummet, you kind of want to have an out right there and then and there. So I think at this point, he could go with a short-term contract. I think he knows at this point in his career, it's going to be kind of just incentive base. Will they, won't they? And I think he's comfortable enough with taking 1 year deals at this point in his career, especially knowing limits are going to be a big factor in just the decision making.
Yeah, and plus he's going to be in a winning situation, or he appears he wants to be in a winning situation. So usually when you got players like that that's about heading towards the downside of their career, they're going to be a little bit more friendly in the for a team salary cap, because they're not going to ask so much money from that particular team.
And along those lines, it's not like he's going to try and fight to win a Super Bowl. He already has. If he feels it to be more incentive-based, or even just to get more guaranteed money and a bonus, that'd probably be the best option for him. Because most players are going to make their money due to their signing bonus. So if Tennessee puts more incentives there, I think that likely gets the deal done.
Yeah, you make a great point there.
So, like I said, right now the Titans and the New England Patriots are the favorites for him at this point. Will it or won't it happen? I don't know. But if it does, you heard it here first. So, we'll see how that goes. But he would definitely be a welcome addition to the Tennessee Titans if that's how it panned out. Well, all right, guys. I want to thank everybody for watching the show tonight. It's always fantastic to have a good audience and just get back to the basics and talk football. I love this point of time where we can just talk free agency and see all the moves happening, and we're not done. Believe me, this is going to keep going right up until minicamp starts, so we'll keep you locked in and get you all the info that we can. I want to thank Ryan Harris for joining the show tonight. It's always great having you on the show, buddy. You're always a friend of the show, always welcome here. Definitely want to get you another shout out and let the audience where to find you and where to get that good content.
Once again, I appreciate it. I always welcome the Power Hour. I always describe it as a NFL Network experience. I feel like I'm at ESPN with the different topics and everything, so I appreciate it. But you can definitely catch me on Twitter at RyanHarris662. You can also please follow the podcast at TheJumpPastTN. And as always, we're gonna keep talking about the off season. We got the draft coming up. We got guests coming. So, you never know who I'm going to bring out. So, I can bring out Paul Gaharski. I can bring out Teron Davenport. I can bring Mickey Ryan. It may be a football player. You never know. I'm working on some guests, and I can't wait for what's going to happen with the show and everything. So stay tuned.
He could bring out the Power Hour.
We've worked out something on that, so be on the lookout on that. Be on the lookout.
Yeah, you should definitely look that out. Ryan Harris bringing out the best content on the podcast. Check it out every chance you get to. Putting out the good stuff. You won't miss anything good if you don't catch it, so you got to check it out. Ryan, once again, thank you for joining us on the show. And once again, I want to thank everybody else. Remind you, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. And don't forget, on your way out of YouTube, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more content. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour. Take care. Tighten up.
Tighten up.